So we've heard over today and more generally that the circular economy holds incredible potential and opportunity. And we've, as a foundation, have published many reports over the years, and many other people have come in more recently, and we're seeing large institutions report on the opportunity of a circular economy pretty much monthly. And the narrative's shifting somewhat. It's not just about the trillion-dollar opportunity that waste represents, but it's an opportunity that's broader than that. It represents the possibility of radically reducing energy in the system, of decarbonising, of reducing pollution, of actually creating a distributed, perhaps more diverse and a more resilient model. And we can see from the thousands of case studies that are emerging that things are moving. We actually have many case studies now that are coming from startups and from large industry that show that the circular economy idea is taking hold. So the idea is out there, and the challenge we have now and the opportunity that we have is to really think about how we accelerate this transition. How can we actually start to nudge the economy such that it shifts to a more resilient model and starts to take hold? And at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, this is what we're deeply interested in. We're really interested in how do we accelerate the transition to a circular economy. So where should we start? And we've heard a number of different perspectives through the day and this afternoon as well. We believe the role of government is absolutely essential. And we're actively working in that space. But it's sometimes slow, it's sometimes challenging, it's a risky process, and if we're looking at trying to shift a global system, we need to think about policy being enacted around the world in 195 countries, in thousands of cities, in tens of thousands of municipalities. So that process is perhaps not catalytic. Education and public awareness are also clearly important, and we're working in these areas with the objective of inspiring a generation and also giving the public agency in the transition. We want to start to shift the way people think about a linear economy and the opportunities that a circular economy starts to represent. But for us, as we think about how do we do this quickly, how do we actually drive systems level change at pace, business for us is key. It's the powerhouse of innovation, and it can move fast. We believe that business-led entrepreneurialism, innovation, disruption are an absolutely crucial part of the answer. That competitive forces can actually lead to rapid change. This includes large global corporations who reach billions of customers around the world every day. It includes mid-size and small-size companies who are serving local communities, but they're also parts of global supply chains. It also includes startups and individual entrepreneurs, some of whom will fundamentally shift the economy in the future. So it's clear to us that a lot can be done at the individual company level. And again, we've heard lots of examples through today, and we have lots of case examples where companies are innovating now and they're collaborating now to develop better product service systems, to develop better business models, to create and design products that can be used and reused and remanufactured. That's all happening, and we're involved with that, and we're working hard with many of the world's large companies and some small ones as well to progress that agenda. But to address some complex global challenges and to capture the opportunity at scale, we need a new approach that not just transforms individual companies, but starts to shift entire industries and their ecosystems. So take plastics, for example, and plastics packaging. With our help, this has become a hot topic recently, and countries around the world are starting to wake up and mobilize around banning plastics, single-use plastics, starting to look at waste and pollution from plastics and addressing those. But we know that bans on single-use plastics and bags and straws, while it's important, is only a small part of the solution. Beach cleanups only represent a fraction of the problem, beach and bans will only address part of it. We need to actually look at other ways of moving upstream. The bans and beach cleanups will never stop the tsunami of plastics that are coming downstream now, baked into the consumptive linear economy that we're living within. So we need to think about other ways in which we can create the conditions for a better model that keeps material value of plastics in the economy and out of the ocean. To do this, again, we need to move upstream. We need to start looking at the root causes, and we need to engage with the key actors from across the entire system, with governments globally, and we need to set time-bound, meaningful targets across multiple fronts and fundamentally start to redesign the entire system from end to end. So plastics is an interesting case for us. We got into this, and when we got into this, we looked at it for two reasons. One was the plastic story itself, but we also wanted to think about the approach to a global system. Could you proactively look at a highly complex global system and find a way of actually shifting it and to move to a better model? We went to many, many meetings early on in the process with the world's leading companies and organisations, and the answer was beach cleanups and haven't got a clue. It's too complex. How do we move the system? So we felt it was essential to find a new approach. We wanted to find a new approach, and we wanted to learn from the process as well, so that we could start to think about systems level change as a practice that could be applied to other systems like fashion, like food, like electronic goods. And we've learned a lot through this process, and we're still learning. It's certainly something that's in process. What's crystal clear to us is that there is no silver bullet, there is no simple answer, there is no singular solution or the one thing. I get asked all the time, what's the one thing that you would do? It doesn't exist, and it shouldn't be surprising that the one thing doesn't exist, because that's not how systems work. They're complex, they're evolving, and everything is interconnected. So what have we learnt so far? Firstly, you need to lead with a vision, because in the early stages of this process of systems level change, there is no consensus on the answer, and there is not even consensus on the rough shape of the solution. The process needs to be guided by a vision, a common shared destination, and underpinning principles. For the new plastics economy, we promoted the idea of a circular economy for plastics, where by design, plastics never become waste. Rather, they should fit within a system so that they could be used and used again. Secondly, you have to find an entry point to a massive complex system. You can't change it all at once. You can't even get your head around it. So you need to narrow the scope of the problem and find parts of the system that hold the most potential for making real progress and for demonstrating what's possible before enlarging the scope again. So for example, we chose plastics packaging as the entry point to plastics generally, which is a vastly bigger topic. And you need to map the system. You need to understand the key dynamics in order to work out which of the actors in the system actually have the greatest potential to influence the rest of the system. In plastics, major brands play a crucial role, and they have an enormous amount to gain by getting this right. You need to get the system in the room. You need to get the actors from across the entire value chain into the room, and you need to practice. You need to think about getting in plastics, you need to get everybody from the polymer manufacturers, the packaging manufacturers, the brands, the cities. You need to bring them in the room, and you need to have the representation of the entire system, and you need to start looking for solutions at scale. And when we did this in the plastic space, it was the first time it had ever been done. So getting the system in the room is clearly important, but another important thing to do is you need to resist and reject incrementalism. You need to raise the ambition level, and you need to keep pushing the thinking in order to come up with solutions that are actually fit to the nature of the challenge, fit to the scale of the challenge. So we were pushed many times early on in the process to move to pilot fast, to get to a solution that we could test. And we resisted this, and we resisted it for a year or more, because we felt that the conversation that we were having in the room was highly incremental. And it really comes back to this topic of actually practicing and loving the problem. So the final thing that I would say is you need to actually love the problem. You need to stick with it. You need to be comfortable with an iterative, sometimes challenging and frustrating process, and you need to persist. We had many, many hypotheses emerge through the process of the new plastics economy work in the early stages, and we cut them down. And we tried again, more hypotheses, tested them analytically, cut them down. And we had to do a process whereby we designed, we prototyped, we tested, we learned, we adapted, and we did it again, and we did it again, and we did it again, and we're still doing it. And this is the process that you need to go through. As I had said, you have to practice, and it's a new approach. You need a new approach to thinking about solutions for complex systems. And this, in many ways, can seem daunting, but I think there are many reasons to be optimistic. Systems, even very complex systems, global economic systems, can and do and have changed very quickly. We've seen it done. The massive technology-enabled transformation of the global economy over the past 30 to 40 years being a prime example, and there are many others. So we believe that the development of applied methods and design for system solutions, focusing on systems-level change, is the new frontier. It's one of the grand challenges of our time, and we believe it holds huge potential. We're working with leading businesses, researchers, designers, and thinkers and governments and cities around the world to further develop and refine the approach that we're working on so that we and others can apply it widely. And by doing this, in combination with a number of other reinforcing efforts, we believe that we can, together, accelerate the circular economy. Thank you.